Hey there, Seb by the Realtor here. If you're thinking about selling your home in the Bay Area, you probably have some questions about paying a buyer's agent some compensation now that the rules have changed. If you're wondering, should you or should you not offer a commission to a buyer's agent, then you definitely want to watch this video. All right, well, we are just over a week now living with the changes to the real estate industry, which have been brought about as the result of this settlement of the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, and business has definitely changed. To begin with, the California Residential Listing Agreement, which is the standard contract that a seller will sign with a real estate agent when they go to sell their home, there is no longer any mention whatsoever of any kind of compensation for the buyer's agent. It used to be that there was a one total commission amount paid, and then out of that, how much would be offered to the buyer's agent as cooperating compensation, which was a blanket offer of compensation. No matter how much the offer was, high, low, whatever, you had to pay that much to the buyer's agent. And that is no longer the case. There is no place anywhere in the standard residential listing agreement to even begin to offer a buyer's agent any kind of commission. Now, my brokerage, Compass, and I'm sure every other real estate brokerage out there, has come up with an addendum to the listing agreement which allows you to specify how much, if anything, you would want to offer a buyer's agent. So the Compass form has three checkboxes. The first choice is, no matter what happens, I'm not going to offer the buyer's agent any commission. And the second checkbox is, I may offer a buyer's agent some commission, depends on what the offer looks like. And the third checkbox basically is a blanket offer of compensation to the agent, regardless of how much that offer might be. So if you are going to be filling out a listing agreement, don't be surprised if your agent does hand you this addendum and say, now what do we want to do about a buyer's agent? I think that reflexively, a lot of sellers are going to say, you know what, I want to offer $0 to the buyer's agent. And you know, that may be okay or it may not be okay, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. But a lot of people, I think, maybe even most people, are going to say, you know what, I'm going to go with option 2. I'm going to say I will consider a request for a buyer's agent compensation when I review the offer. So I think a lot of people will end up saying that, but a lot of people will still say, I am going to offer some compensation to the buyer's agent. For example, I am seeing now that in the offers that I have been writing up in the last week or 10 days or so, that in fact, most sellers actually, well, I haven't written that many offers in the last week or 10 days, but every offer that I have written, the seller has been offering the buyer's agent commission regardless of what that offer looks like. And I do think that many sellers will continue to do this going forward. Even though they don't have to offer the compensation, I think many will still choose to do so. But I am telling my seller clients, hey, you know what? It doesn't really matter which box you check, because the amount of compensation that the buyer's agent is going to receive is now dictated by the buyer-broker agreement, which the buyer must have before an offer is submitted. So a buyer will now have to sign a contract with the buyer's agent that specifies how much that buyer's agent will be paid at close of escrow. Now, the question is, who actually pays that compensation to the buyer's agent? Is it going to be the buyer themselves, or is it going to be the seller? Well, there is another form which you can now include when you're making an offer, and that is called the SPBB, the Seller Payment to Buyer Broker, which you actually put into your offer so that the buyer can say, hey, seller, I want you to pay, this much of the compensation to my agent. So now when you are negotiating the deal, the seller can turn around in a counter offer and they can say, no, I am not going to pay that much to the buyer broker. I'm going to pay a fraction of that, or I'm going to pay 0, or maybe they will say, I'm going to pay all of that. Of course, when the buyer submits their offer, they may not ask the seller to pay any compensation at all. The buyer may be comfortable with paying all of the compensation to the buyer's agent. Now, it could be that if the buyer is paying cash, it actually makes much more sense for the seller not to pay the commission and have the buyer pay the commission, because that way you will end up having a lower purchase price. Rather than rolling that commission into the purchase price, the buyer just pays that. They have a lower sale price. But this goes to underline, I think, what is really at the crux of the issue, which is the net amount of money that the seller is going to get when they sell their property. So for example, let's just say the property is worth $1 million fair market value, and a buyer's agent makes an offer and they say, I'll pay you $1 million, but I want you to pay 2.5% to my buyer's agent, which is $25,000 out of $1 million. So the seller is really looking at a net of $975,000. Well, what if the seller says, you know what, I don't want to pay anything to the buyer's agent. I want you to pay any fee to the buyer's agent. So the buyer's agent might just turn around and say, okay, well, listen, I will not offer you $1 million anymore. I will offer you $975,000 because I have an agreement with my agent to pay that $25,000. So either way, the seller nets the same amount of money. They still net that $975,000, but the buyer pays their agent directly. Now, here in the Bay Area, where you have many, many buyers who have sufficient cash reserves that they can actually easily pay the buyer's broker compensation, I think we're going to see a lot of offers where they don't want the seller to make that payment for them, that they will want to go ahead and take that responsibility for payment to the broker on themselves. But there will be many, many situations, actually I think most situations still, even in the Bay Area where there are so many buyers who have lots of cash to pay their agent, I think there will be many situations where the buyer is going to say, you know what, I do want you, seller, to pay my buyer's agent's commission. And I think that really that's totally fine, because what it really comes down to, again, at the end of the day, is the net amount of cash to the seller at close of escrow. When I work with a seller, my goal is always to have multiple offers. I want to see my seller have 5 offers, 10 offers, a whole array of offers to choose from, and then they can calculate out with each offer how much cash they are going to get at the end of the day, paying a buyer's agent's commission or not paying a buyer's agent commission, because all that really matters to the seller, again, at the end of the day, is what is the size of their check at closing. And if it happens to be that the offer which nets the seller the most amount of money does include some money for the buyer's agent, then what does it really matter to the seller? I don't think there are that many sellers who are really ideologically opposed to paying a buyer's agent. I think what they really care about and have always cared about is the net dollars to them at close of escrow, which is why even in a for sale by owner situation, most for sale by owner people who are not paying an agent to represent them as a seller, most of those people, the overwhelming majority, at least in my experience, will in fact offer to pay the buyer's agent something. And usually it's actually quite a bit. Usually it is 2.5% or 3% or 2%. It's a big chunk of change. The sellers are happy to offer that because they are really only concerned about one thing. They are concerned about their net cash to them at closing. And I don't think that's ever going to change for any seller, because that is where the rubber meets the road. That is what is the most important thing. So when you are signing a listing agreement with an agent and they present to you an addendum and they say, do you want to offer any compensation to the buyer's agent? I don't really think it matters which box you check. You could say, I want to offer no compensation for sure, because you know what? If the offer comes in, the offer can still ask for that compensation, regardless of what you may have said in your initial listing agreement. The buyer can still ask for that. And you can also say, well, I will negotiate the commission with the buyer's agent, which is basically what's going to happen anyway, right? You are almost for sure going to be negotiating that commission with the buyer's agent. And even if you do make a blanket offer of compensation to the buyer's agent when you make your offer, there is nothing that says that you can't renegotiate it at that time anyway, based on how the offer comes in. Because that's the great thing about real estate. Everything is negotiable, and it always has been. I think the issue is that many sellers did not realize that they had as much power as they always had to negotiate those commissions. But now it is plainly clear to everybody that commissions are fully negotiable with each and every offer that comes across the table. All right, that is all I have for this video. I hope you did enjoy watching it and that you got something valuable out of it. And if you did, I'm guessing, although this is just a guess, that you might also enjoy some of these videos over here. These are some of the most popular videos here on my YouTube channel, so please go ahead, take a look. All right, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and please stay tuned.